Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm reviewing one of Bachmann's most beautiful steam locomotives. From what I remember of today's model, it might not be one of Bachmann's best models, you know, when you take absolutely everything into account, but I do remember this being one of Bachmann's very best looking models, in fact maybe the best. So the Loco is this. It is the Great Northern Atlantic Class C1. And this model was first released in 2015, so nearly 10 years ago now, in the form that you can see here. This is the Locomotion exclusive version. And then later, Bachmann did a more general release of the C1 where it went out to more retailers, although the liveries were a little bit different that time around. They did create a Great Northern green like this for the general release, but it didn't have the kind of ready underframe that this model does. It was only the Locomotion version that had that, which is why I went for this one. So I bought this from Worley in 2018 at a reduced price of £130 direct from Locomotion. I think when you consider what prices are like today, that's a very, very good price indeed. And when Bachmann did a general release of the C1, the RRP was just a hair under 200 quid. It was £199.95. And again, even that seems pretty reasonable by today's standards, doesn't it? But like I say, I remember this being absolutely gorgeous, so well worth a revisit. Is this still a good looking model by today's standard? And is it worth picking up perhaps second hand? Which unfortunately is the main way that you can get one of these at the moment. But also if Bachmann do decide to create another batch of these, hopefully this will help you to decide whether or not to snap these up. But anyway, let's take a look. The beautiful Bachmann C1, a gorgeous, gorgeous Loco. Alright, the Atlantic wheel configuration, probably my favourite steam wheel configuration. So it's a 442 with a bogie at the front, 4 driving wheels and then a pony at the back. And this was a wheel configuration that really died with the pre-grouping age. Obviously a lot of the Atlantics like the C1 survived beyond the grouping era, but I don't think they were building any new ones after 1923. If anybody knows of a new build Atlantic post-grouping, please do let me know, but I certainly can't think of any. So yeah, a beautifully old-fashioned wheel configuration. Let me show you the end of the box. So the version I've got is 31-760 NRM. It is the Great Northern Atlantic Class C1, number 251, in the Great Northern lined green, which I think is one of Bachmann's best liveries. It was produced exclusively for the National Railway Museum, and it's DCC ready with a 21-pin DCC socket. And if I show you the back of the box, you can see there's a brief history of the class here, so feel free to pause and read that if you like, although I will give you a brief background on the C1 in just a second. But for now, let's open this up and let's experience this. And if you've never seen this one before, you're in for a real treat because it's gorgeous. So, opening up the box, a 10-year-old model now. And it's interesting because when I think of this one, I don't think of it as a remotely old-fashioned model. It feels like only yesterday since I bought this, but it wasn't. Many years have passed. Pulling out the pack, there's that. Let's start by taking a look at the instructions then. So we've got a bit here. Let's start with this. Okay, Great Northern Class C1 Atlantic. We've got the exploded diagram here. Doesn't go into masses of detail, doesn't show each of the individual parts, but you can get the gist here. You've got the upper body there, the chassis with the motor there, no flywheel on this motor. I think mechanically this model is a little bit behind the times, and it was at the time I first got it as well. But yeah, that gives you an idea. Inside, ooh, got even more detail here. So this looks like accessories for the Great Northern livery as preserved. That's cool. And then on the bottom half, we've got the LNER version and also the BR version, which has different accessories, as you can see. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And then on the back, this is more useful. Running in, that's fairly standard. And on the other side here, you can see how the body is held on. Screw at the front of the Loco, 2 more at the back. You can get the body off quite easily, and yeah, the tender is held on with 2 screws and the DCC socket is inside the tender. So yeah, pretty basic. And then on this, we've just got some generic information on maintenance and care, which is obviously useful if you've not seen it before, but otherwise it's just a repetition of what you've probably seen in the past. Okay, so with that, let's pull this out of its box and let's see what this is like. I can see we do get a good number of accessories with this one, so let's take a look. Let's take down. Gosh, so some of it's still on a sprue. I think what's on the sprue is fireman's tools. So I can see we've got hooks and shovels and pokers and things. Yeah, all the different irons for the fireman. That's awesome. And then otherwise, we've got loads of different bits and details here. I can see we've got painted pipe work. We've got screw link couplings in here, which are the articulating kind. Cab doors, I think those are etched parts. They look pretty good. Yeah, there's a lot included here. So if you wanted to detail the model up, you can do. And there's also a speaker enclosure in there as well for your sound. Brake rigging too, of course. Okay, let's do a reveal then. So one thing that Bachmann has improved a lot recently is the finish of their Locos. So I'm curious to relearn whether the finish looks good on this one, being a little bit older. Oh, actually, yeah, it's not bad, actually. Yeah, hopefully you can see that's got a bit of a sheen to it. I think newer Bachmann models are slightly better than this, and perhaps the later general release of the C1 would have had a better finish. I'm not sure about that. But yeah, this one, it still looks decent, not quite as satin as some later models, but the precision of the decoration here is just amazing, and that's what makes Bachmann models look as good as they do, I think. Okay, lifting up, let's see what this is like. And yeah, it's a heavy one. A very, very heavy Loco, this. Which is strange because the boiler and the firebox, these are all made of plastic. Same with the smoke box as well. It's only the running plate that is die-cast and presumably the chassis as well. Yet, this seems to weigh lots more than other Locos that just have the die-cast chassis and running plate. So yeah, I don't know what's going on. I suppose the running plate is quite a thick, chunky part, and we've got that area around the rear pony, which looks pretty hefty as well. But yeah, the weight of this model is fantastic, which is of course what you want because you've got a lot of wheels on the Loco, which are not drivers. So yeah, in order for this to be a good puller, it just has to be a heavy one. But yeah, look at this thing. Look at the lining, look at the chrome finish of the metalwork, and of course that ready underframe detail, which I do believe was exclusive to the NRM version, which is why I went for this one. But yeah, an amazing looking model. And we'll have a bit of background on the C1 in real life, and then we'll take a much closer look at this Loco and her gorgeous, gorgeous details. Introduced just after the turn of the 20th century in 1902, the Class C1 was a fleet of 94 Atlantic locomotives built to the design of Henry Ivan. A couple of different versions of the C1 existed. We had the larger boiler version, the most numerous design, and the one represented by this model, but there were also 22 C1s which had smaller boilers, and these would later be classified as the C2 by the LNER. When new, these were used to haul the heaviest and fastest express passenger trains that the Great Northern had to offer, and they could do so at speeds of 90 miles per hour, which was an impressive feat for the time. They ran on 2 outside cylinders, had 170 psi boilers, and they could produce a tractive effort of 77 kilonewtons. Following the grouping of 1923, the C1s became part of the LNER, where they were split up into those 2 C1 and C2 classes, depending on their boiler sizes. By this point, though, they were no longer the most powerful locomotives on the railway, and so they were relegated to lighter express work. Withdrawal began in the mid-1940s, and the final example was withdrawn in 1950. Today, only 2 C1 Atlantics remain under preservation, one with the smaller boiler and one with the larger boiler. So here she is up close for you, and yeah, I think I'm going to double down on what I said. This has to be Bachmann's most beautiful steam locomotive. If not the most, then certainly one of them, easily the top 5. Yeah, everything comes together to work beautifully here. You've got the wheel configuration, which naturally looks great and very balanced. You've got the detail of this model, which Bachmann have done a great job on. The decoration, which we'll look at in just a second, is just top notch. And also the quality is great, with just a couple of exceptions. We've got some visible glue here at the front, which, for full disclosure, I'm not going to blame Bachmann for, because I'm pretty sure I once had to repair that handrail, so it's quite possible that that one was me. Over on the other side of the cab though, there is some visible glue on the handrails there, and I have done nothing to these handrails, so that's a small quality issue straight out of the box. Other than that though, the quality of the model is absolutely superb, as you can tell, and that really makes a huge difference. So first of all, thanks to the large amount of metal construction on this model, it's insanely heavy. It weighs in at 367 grams, making this heavier than Hornby's new Black 5. That's crazy, isn't it? The Black 5, much larger than this. The C1 Atlantic is heavier though. So let's dive in and take a look at the decoration. Yeah, up close the finish looks okay. We've seen slightly better, I think, but generally speaking, there's not a lot wrong with that. It does look lovely. The lining though is just the best. I mean, look at the precision of the banding on the boiler. It just looks wonderful, and it's quite complex as well because it wraps all the way underneath, and on the firebox we've got the lining along the bottom as well. The splashes are fully lined. Look at the lining on the underframe as well. I love this sort of tan, brownish, reddish colour that the whole underframe has been treated to. And you've got things like the axle boxes and the springs picked out in the black, all of it lined in red, the steps, the frames, absolutely stunning. You've also got little details picked out here and there, lots of different valves and things. The builder's plate is printed onto the side as well. All the little components on the firebox have been separately painted and picked out and such. It's just absolutely crazy, isn't it? Here's the running number on the side of the cab, beautifully applied as you'd fully expect. You've got the buffer beams here which have the running numbers fitted onto them, and look at the buffer housings as well, separately painted. Helgen, this is how it's done. We've also got the smoke box door, which has all of the detail picked out. I mean, it's not just the fact that this has been picked out that's impressive, it's the fact that it's been done so precisely that makes all the difference. And a special feature here is that you can actually open up the smoke box door, and inside there is a wealth of detail. That is just a crazy detail that we don't really see anymore from Bachmann. Yeah, just love that, how awesome that looks. Okay, let's jump in and take a look at the level of detail then. So the wheels are gorgeous. These are cast wheels, and look at the way they've been painted. You've got the sort of black band around the outer rim of the wheels, the green spokes, the centers of the wheels have been painted into the black, all done very precisely. The rods and the motion, these are cast parts, and there's some great detail in them, and they also carry the appearance of a good amount of weight, which is fantastic. The buffers are metal but not sprung. That's quite surprising because every other feature on this model is insanely premium. But no, the buffers are just static, which is a strange one. We do have the lamp brackets pre-fitted to the buffer beam though, a separately fitted smoke box door handle which is perfectly straight, and more lamp brackets up here too, as you can see. The Loco is adorned with these beautiful chrome finished handrails which just look such high quality. Made of real metal, of course, and even the one on the running plate here above the steps is a metal part. They've not skimped and used plastic on the smaller ones. Same with the ones on the side of the cab, of course. Between the frames we've got full detail depicted, which is also been painted. That is just stunning to see. How great does that look? And then up on the top we've got the chimney, which is a great fit to the smoke box. Same with the dome, no massive gaps around that. And then the safety valve assembly, which has this great pre-grouping style to it, behind which we have the whistle, which is not a plastic whistle. This is a turned metal one, and it's got the finish to match. How amazing. And then the cab is quite interesting on this. It's quite a sort of square, boxy looking cab, which sets this apart from some of Bachmann's other Atlantics. It does have the glazed windows though, which are beautifully lined. And the cab interior detail is just crazy, again, for the time. We've got the gauges which have been separately picked out. Lots of different separately fitted parts and controls in here. Pipework which is also been painted, and there's even a separately fitted firebox door which is openable. Gosh, what a feature that is. We've also got this metal tender full plate which is adjustable too, as you can see. Yeah, it's a really impressive cab. It's an open backed cab, of course, so you can see straight into it as you watch the Loco run, so I'm really glad they went the extra mile with that. The tender is just gorgeous. I love this Great Northern tender, possibly one of my favourite tenders in the entire collection. It is even more complex in decoration than the Loco because we've got this dark green on the edges of the body here. You've got the Great Northern lettering which just looks perfect, and also tons and tons of lining on the tender. Yes, on the body here, but also on the underframe. Yeah, all lined in the red here. It just looks great. And the moulding quality is wonderful as well on here. Yeah, it looks very, very effective. Beautiful metal wheels which have had their faces blackened. Another detailed buffer beam with metal but unsprung buffers. More of the chrome finished handrails which look great. Controls and detail towards the front of the tender, and also a removable coal load in the top here, which is a die cast piece. Yeah, so that's pretty heavy. The tender is also a weighty one. Behind there we've got the water filler cap and the coal guard at the back here, which is fully defined, as you can see. Around the back, separately fitted lamp brackets which have great relief to them. Look at those. And of course we've got things like guard irons pre-fitted as well here, although you do have to fit the Loco ones if you want to use those. The Loco also came with its couplings pre-fitted, so you've got a NEM tension lock at the back here which has a bit of pivoting to it, and there's also one fitted to the front bogie, which of course you could remove if you didn't want that. So there you have it, just a gorgeous, gorgeous model. Very, very premium, except for the lack of sprung buffers, which is a strange one, but as many people point out every single time I mention them, they don't really serve much of a purpose. They are entertaining, so I do like to see them, but for £130, which is what I paid for this, yeah, I'm quite happy to see them missed off. But anyway, that is the level of detail. Stunning, as you can see. But let's get this down onto the track, let's get this running, see what it performs like, and let's also take a look at the mechanism. I can't remember 100% whether that is as impressive as the level of detail, but we shall see. So there she is down onto the track, looking just stunning. Oh, that livery. Yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful livery. The mechanism, yeah, a little bit less wonderful. Obviously, it's a very premium looking model, but the mechanism is really anything but, even for 2015 when this was released. So the Loco is quite light on pickups. It does have tender pickups, but the tender wheels pick up through the axles, as you can see, and it's only the outer axles that have pickups on them. The set of wheels in the middle has no pickups. In terms of the Loco, it is just the driving wheels which have pickups, so that means that less than half of the model's wheels actually have pickups on them, which I think could be quite a bit better. It's also got a particularly bad drawbar design on this. I don't know what it is, but it seems to come apart all the time. I don't know if the peg's a little bit shorter, maybe the wires being above the peg are helping to push it off a bit. I don't know, but it's really an annoying drawbar on this one. I'm always having to re-engage it whenever I touch the model, basically. And also the wires stretch underneath the front tender wheels for some reason, and the plug is behind them. Why that was done, I don't know, but yeah, not a great design this. The base keeper plate is held on with screws, but unfortunately it's hardwired in place, so you can't completely remove the base keeper plate to clean the pickups, or to clean the axles and re-lubricate them. So serviceability, a bit of a nightmare with this one. It does have the separate bearings on the axles though, which was not always a given with Bachmann models of this era, so that's great to see. And interestingly, the model has been tooled for both axles to be driven, but only the gears to the rear axle have been fitted. The front ones have been missed out, which I think was a smart move. Yeah, you don't need all the wheels driven here. In terms of body removal, there are two screws at the back of the model which you can get out quite easily. The front screw though is beneath the bogie, and they have put a handy hole in the bogie so that you can get to that screw, except it's not that handy because the hole is too small for most screwdrivers to get into, and it's also too small for the screw to fit through as well. So bigger hole would have been better. I did manage to find a screwdriver that would fit though. And then here is the chassis. It's an incredibly basic chassis with no frills or extra features on it. It's just got a 3-pole motor, unfortunately, which does seem a bit naff for a model of this price, although it is a good running 3-pole motor, and no flywheel as well, as you can see. And there are no lights on this chassis, even though the firebox opens up. No lights behind it or anything like that. So again, quite basic, dates the model a bit, I think. And then in terms of accessing the DCC socket, the tender body is removable by taking out these 2 screws, and then you can unclip it quite easily. And here is the 21-pin DCC decoder socket, so no problem chipping this really. You can see there is a massive capacitor soldered to the circuit board here, and there's no lights, so it's not for smoothing there. So presumably this is kind of an electrical flywheel or something. Maybe it's there to try and keep the motor going, although it is only 10 microfarads, so it really doesn't make any difference. Also, no pre-fitted speaker in this model. There is space for it, but you actually have to remove these metal weights if you want to fit a speaker, so it's really not been designed to make sound fitting that easy. And then the gauge comes in at between 14.2 to 14.4 millimeters, quite reliably on the Loco, but because the tender has those plastic spaces between the wheels on the axles, they are quite spongy, and I got a larger range on those. So yeah, not the greatest quality tender wheels in the world. But yeah, overall, the mechanism's okay. I'm glad it's got the bearings. I'm glad it's got a quality chassis in terms of the way it's been built. But it could be better. Yeah, a better motor would have been nice to have seen, and better serviceability, not to mention the drawbar, which is a bit of a pain. But performance is surprisingly good, I would say, given that the mechanism is not the best. You do have to keep the wheels clean with this one, because obviously only half the wheels pick up, so if they get dirty, it's going to struggle. But with clean wheels, it is a beautiful performer. In forwards, yeah, that was a bit ropey actually in reverse, wasn't it? But yeah, in forwards, it is beautifully smooth. Yeah, a really, really lovely one to watch run this. The motion on the outside looks gorgeous, and an Atlantic in general, I think, just looks wonderful as it runs. Look at that. Let's see what the crawl's like then. Obviously, this has been well run in and recently serviced, as all my models have. So let me pull it into the front, and I'll ease this up very, very slowly, and I'll see at what point this starts to move. So here we go. I am turning it up. Oh, there we go. Look at that. Oh, it has stopped. Give it a bit more. I mean, that is marvellous. And it's pretty smooth as well for a 3-pole motor without a flywheel. I have to keep giving it a bit more though. So yeah, it does seem to be stalling a touch. So yeah, perhaps a better motor would have been, you know, better able to crawl than this. But I would say, given the mechanism, that crawl is pretty good. Now, what is the torque like? 3-pole motor yet again, let's see. Fingers in front of the buffers, up to 50% speed. Yeah, not brilliant really, is it? It is able to turn its wheels, but it's... Blooming heck. Moved my finger out the way and it almost bit it off. Okay, sorry, C1, blimey. Didn't like that, it made me jump. But yeah, it's okay. I would say the performance, it's not the best. We've seen smoother for sure, but given the mechanism in this thing, it is pretty good and reliable as well. I suppose because the wheels that pick up are quite far apart, going over points doesn't cause it to cut out too much, again, provided the wheels are clean. But as you can see, they are clean and it's not cutting out on those, which is good. So with that, I have measured the pulling power of this, and the tractive effort comes in at 0.36 newtons, which isn't too bad. Obviously, that's 23 coaches on straight and level track. But I've not set up 23 coaches. I've just gone for my rake of Great Northern Genesis coaches. And obviously, there's only 4 of those. It's not a huge load, but she looks so lovely with them that I've not been able to resist. But at 0.36 newtons of tractive effort, she could obviously haul quite a bit more than these. So with that, let's go back and test the couplings. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Yeah, a little bit uncontrollable in reverse. I wonder if that's because I tend to run the Loco in the forwards direction. Because obviously I've had this a number of years, it obviously runs more forwards than it does backwards as an express passenger Loco. So that might be why. I don't remember originally this Loco struggling so much in reverse. So I'm not going to go too hard on it for that, because like I say, it might just be down to the way I've run this. Anyway, she looks gorgeous with these coaches. So let's start and we'll go for about that kind of speed, I reckon, because they are express locos. And on the other lines, I'm running some other Atlantic locomotives because they are just fantastic. So this Atlantic was released at around the same time that Bachmann re-released the C1, and this is the H1 in the LBSC Umber. I've got Atlantics on the other lines running, but I've got other Great Northern locos in the sidings, so see which ones you can spot and let me know if you spy an odd one out. And then on the inside line, we've got the, I think this is the H2, is that right? And that's in the Southern Green with some Southern coaches. So let's catch up with the C1. So obviously this isn't a huge load, but will she slow down on the curves? Maybe a tiny bit, but really not too badly. So while the torque of the mechanism's not amazing, it's certainly able to haul modest loads at least, up a bit of an incline without slowing down to a crawl. So yeah, I really do think the performance is good on this, pretty solid. And that's it, you know, there are things about this model that aren't the best, but when it's on the track, when it's running, when it's got its coaches, you can't help but just love the thing. I mean, it just looks stunning, doesn't it? These liveries are just some of the best by Bachmann. I say these because the H1 in the Umber, that looks stunning, and even the Southern Green, which is a livery we see quite a bit more often, that looks incredible as well. So a really lovely Loco. Yeah, not the greatest in the world, and I'm not too sure how much I would want to pay for one if it was re-released today, at least without upgrades. But on the whole, it is a beauty, and I certainly wouldn't be without this one. So there you have it, Bachmann's C1. Let's have some ratings then for Bachmann's beautiful looking C1 Atlantic. It is gorgeous looking, but I am just going to give it a 4-star on detail. On the plus side though, yeah, the decoration is marvellous. Tons of painted detail on this, including inside the cab, which is just tremendous. We've got great fidelity in the moulding, loads of separate parts, the chrome handrails look amazing. Yeah, a really impressive model overall. But I can't give it full marks for detail because it doesn't have any lighting, modern premium models do, and it doesn't have sprung buffers either. Love them or hate them, I am going to point that one out. Performance, actually considering the relatively poor mechanism in this one, is a lot better than I would have expected. I've given it 4-star. So the crawl for a 3-pole motor that doesn't have a flywheel is really, really good. And it is worth saying, yes, these Bachmann 3-pole motors are the best of the 3-pole motors, I would say, even if we do see better performance out of proper 5-pole motors. It is a nice smooth runner that stays at a constant speed, but the torque isn't fantastic. Yeah, it's not a particularly powerful motor, and while it's not struggling with this small number of coaches, obviously you might want your C1 to be able to haul more than this, and with larger loads, yeah, this does struggle a little bit more. So it's not the best performer in the world. Torque in particular is a bit of a struggle. Otherwise though, way better than expected. An easy 4-star for that. Pulling power then, yeah, it's pretty good. Because of the weight of the Loco, it is more powerful than you might expect given some other 4-coupled locomotives. So 0.36 newtons, that's around 23 coaches on straight and level track. Obviously less once you start introducing gradients and curves, but on straight track, 23 coaches, I think that's pretty good for a Loco of this size. Mechanism then, I think, is the weakest aspect of this model, so I've given it 2-star. On the plus side, it does have the bearings, which quite a few Bachmann Locos from 10 years or more ago don't have, so that's good. It's also got a decent chassis design. It is quite a pleasing one, isn't it, this? However, it's not got that many pickups. Only half of the model's wheels actually pick up power. That's not great. You've still got that awful drawbar design, which is just a real pain in the neck with this one. Not that serviceable because the base keeper plate is hardwired in place, and it's also just got the 3-pole motor, as I've mentioned, without even a flywheel. It's also got no pre-fitted speaker, although I'm not actually marking it down for that because I think if reflected in the price, the lack of speaker isn't a big deal. So yeah, 2-star on mechanism, not the best. Quality then, I've given 4-star. Now on the plus side, the quality of the decoration is absolutely amazing. The precision of all the little picked out parts is just great. I do think the finish could have been a little bit better. We've seen better finishes from Bachmann on newer releases. And there is the odd bit of visible glue around some of the detail parts, which means I can't give it 5 on quality, but otherwise the quality is great, and the amount of metal in that Loco, the weight of it, is really, really good. So yeah, good 4-star here, nice quality model. Value for money then. Now obviously you're going to have to take this with a pinch of salt because this model hasn't been available new for a little while, and it's hard to say what the prices would be if it was to be released today. But back in 2019, the RRP was £199.95, and I paid £130 for mine at an exhibition at a reduced price. So at face value, yeah, this seems like a really good price. Obviously, bear in mind though, the inflation that we've seen over the past few years makes this price look pretty good, better than it felt back in the day. If Bachmann were to bring this model back, would the RRP still be less than £200? Oh, I doubt it, but if it ever happens, I might have to revisit this. But yeah, I think for the actual price I paid, which is all I can go on, taking into account the RRP of the time, I've given it 4-star. I think it would have been 5, but obviously the mechanism does mean that it's probably not quite worth that. Overall then, that is 7.32 out of 10. Yeah, a little bit lower than in my original C1 review, but then of course standards have improved since then, so that is to be expected. That is a grade of D, which does seem pretty harsh for a Loco that looks this great. But yeah, I've seen so much better mechanisms than on this model that I think that is fair. And actually, if the mechanism was spot on, 5-star, this would have been more like a B. But anyway, into the logbook it goes, where it's not fared too badly actually. Yeah, 17th place, above the 178 accumulator and below the New York City Hudson. So I would say if you can find one of these second hand at the right price, absolutely I would go for this. Also, if Bachmann bring this back, provided the prices are okay, and depending on what upgrades they might make to this model, I don't know about that, then yeah, I think also this is certainly one to consider if you're a fan of the Great Northern. So there you have it then folks, that was my full review of Bachmann's C1 Atlantic. Please do comment down below and let me know what you think about this thing, and also which of Bachmann's Atlantics do you think is the best. I've got 3 of them running today. I think they're all lovely, and so that's quite a difficult question to answer, I think. But if you've got a thought on that and a reason why, do let me know down in the comments. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed taking a fresh look at this Loco, filmed up to my sort of modern standards. I always talk about modern standards, don't I? But yeah, filmed as I film my reviews today, and I think that is something that this Loco deserves. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.